With that, I feel like it's the perfect opportunity to dive right into our developer interview with our senior narrative designer, Nova. Woo!
Welcome, Nova.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, first off, Nova, what do you do at Warner Brothers Games Boston?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm a senior narrative designer. So my job is to make sure that the narrative integrates with gameplay. And the role can be pretty different studio to studio, but it can mean things like making storylines, crafting characters, writing dialogues, or like pretty much any other text you might see in the game, and just making sure that players are having a really immersive experience. And for Conquest, that means a lot of handling of the like event narrative text and like those intro dialogues from when you first start the game, and just generally making sure that we're bringing all the Game of Thrones universe goodies to life. So
Right. So you actually like worked on like things like the MPE, like when we were releasing that we previewed to players like a month ago, and basically just bringing all that dialogue in, which is terribly interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun. I got to write for Tyrion, and he's sassy and great to write for. So, really fun.
And in that stream of things, how long have you been working on these ARC events in tandem with House of the Dragon season 2?
Yeah, so we started like several months before the season premiere. So like there's a lot of planning that goes into that. We have to decide on like the key moments to highlight from the upcoming season. We have to draft all that text. We have to get it approved by like the powers that be that hold the licenses to all this stuff. And then getting all the art together. So like everything in game development, it's just like a big team effort to get done.
Right. It's working with the developers. It's working with design. It's working with HBO just to make sure all those things are running in tandem with each other.
Totally. Yeah.
What were some of the biggest inspirations for the arcs that we've seen in game so far?
So for the arcs that you've seen so far, like the events are really focusing on all those like little decisions that really lead up to the Dance of Dragons. Because the story is kind of like dominoes. It's like there's one to move point here or there, and then the whole realm kind of tears apart into these two factions of blacks versus greens. So I wanted to highlight, some of those big moments where the family is really fracturing. So, like, for example, when Alicent Hightower shows up at Rhaenyra's betrothal with that, like, iconic green dress, it's kind of her unofficial declaration of her allegiance.
Right.
And then, later on, her son loses his eye to Rhaenyra's son, Lucerys. Obviously, a point of contention. In the process, he also gains, like, the biggest, scariest dragon, Vhagar. So I thought it was important to highlight some of those moments where it makes peace really hard to find. And for me, it really boils down to like Viserys, because at core the story is about Viserys loving his daughter enough, believing in her ability enough to declare her his heir when literally his whole council was like, don't do it, she's a woman. That's not the move, man. But
I have many words I cannot say.
he believes in it. He believes in her. So and he's a character that's like really predisposed towards peace, but he's basically living in a world that makes it impossible. It's like this is a world of war and conquest, so it's really hard for him to get that peace that he wants. And so he was kind of the common thread through those events as well, I'd say.
I loved your view of it and like just kind of discussing it and how that thread came to be, because Viserys is like a very sympathetic character. Just throughout House of the Dragon.
He just wants everyone to get along. That's all his little heart wants.
The sadness of it. What were some of the biggest struggles that you actually had to deal with when creating these event arcs?
Well, from a narrative, like, and writer perspective, like, so much cool stuff happens in the show, so it was really hard to decide, like, what events to highlight.
Right.
But one of the, like, bigger challenges for writing our event copy for season 2 is that I was writing it before the season had premiered. So for all the season 1 arcs, I had watched the show. I know how the show portrayed the events from the books. But for season 2, I didn't get to watch the episodes before writing. It was kind of like a game of telephone. Like I had secondhand notes about what happened in each episode's script, but I didn't actually read that script or anything. So it's hard to know what actually makes it in, since what's in the script, it doesn't always make it to the screen. So there's like some guesswork involved in like what events are going to really be the major ones of that season. And then another challenge, which is making sure that we like don't spoil too much for players who haven't seen the episode yet. Like, we want it to be fun. We don't want to spoil anything important. Of course, like technically the whole story is spoiled in Red Fire and Blood, but many people have only watched the show, so we're really trying to look out for them.
Oh, definitely. And you never know, like, what the show's going to add or change. So, at the end, it is kind of a mystery. I mean, you know the basic ending, but you don't know,
You don't, right, exactly. You don't know how it's going to play out.
Talking about future things that we don't know, can you give us a preview of what's coming in next week's arc?
Yeah, so next week, the arc is really going to highlight when things are really starting to pop off and the Dance of Dragons is like really starting.
Mm-hmm.
And like the most critical moment in that is in the show, when Viserys is dying and he kind of shares his final words to Queen Alicent. She misinterprets it, and she thinks that he wants to crown his son Aegon instead of Rhaenyra, but that's not the Aegon he's talking about. He's talking about Aegon the Conqueror, the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, and like that's really a great example of one moment where you're like, you wish that George R. Martin had picked a couple different character names, and that the Targaryens didn't use the same like set of 10 names. In their family lineage, because that one misunderstanding, it launches the entire Dance of Dragons, and that's starting with Aegon's coronation. So all the events that are upcoming, they're going to highlight those plot points of like point of no return leading up to the war. And by the close of that event arc, the two sides of the family, the Blacks and the Greens, are like committed to the war, and there's no way to get out of it except to go through it, really.
Right. I love that about like just House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, where it's like it's very much similar to real life, right? With like royal families just reusing these names over and over again, and how like such a small thing that we wouldn't think about being like a problem just ends up making this all explode. I just love it.
Yeah, totally. It's really a moment where you're like, I wish something else had happened there, but yeah.
That's actually all the questions I have for you, Nova. Do you have any closing words to send us off with?
Yeah, I just hope that people enjoy playing alongside the new season this year. It was super fun to highlight those big moments of the story, and yeah, it's a celebration of this universe that we all really love. So I hope people enjoy it. That's all.
Thank you, Nova. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to us today. We loved hearing you talk about House of the Dragon and just diving into those little bits of lore that we all enjoy.
Yeah, thank you.